started here. Thank you everybody for joining us today. Our members, as well as people up from other OLLIs. I know we have as far away as Louisiana today. Hooray! We are really excited to have you here and have Jim here to teach our class today. I want to remind you that we have these every weekday in February at 12:30, so feel free to log on. We'll be using the same Zoom link, so you can just use that same link that you used today. Log on here and see what we have happening. Next week, we have some really fun stuff coming up. One that I'm really excited about is the 5 famous sons of Wahoo, Nebraska. And if you didn't even know that there was a Wahoo, Nebraska, you for sure need to tune in for this one. So let's see, I need to make Jim a co-host and we will get Jim started here. There we go. All right, we are lucky enough to have Jim here in our office. You can see him. He's James Moos on the screen. I'm going to spotlight him so everyone can see him. Jim, you are on.
Okay, so I'm trying to share my screen. Slideshow. Okay. Can you see just my?
We're seeing your notes too.
Yeah. Okay. I was just practicing this and it was working. Just like, you know.
Go back to your share screen and sometimes you can choose another version of it.
Okay.
You may have it on presenter view.
Thank you. Yeah.
PowerPoint.
So I go from the beginning. Okay, so I got this. My pitch. Oh, you know what's sucking here? I apologize. So let me get the. So can you see? You still see my notes, or do you see?
We still see your notes, but I'm trying to remember how to get you out of presenter view.
Well, it's showing both I got 2 screens here. That's the problem. I tried just sharing the app.
It's presenter view on PowerPoint, not on Zoom.
Okay, share. Okay, now you should see a picture of bread, right?
Yes, we got it. Thank you.
And this worked perfectly for me. I had it showing my video here, but I guess being on Zoom, it's taken my it's taken our. So I should have me right here in this picture here. I apologize. So I'd worked on this and had this really cool, but now the way it uses your camera, it's not working.
It's still cool. You go for it. You tell us about it.
Okay. Well, anyhow, so this is what I'm gonna do is go through a simple recipe for artisan bread. First, I should tell you about me. I have a lot of hobbies, and I like making baking is one of them. It's probably one of my favorites. I started making bread. Probably about 15 years ago. I got doing just whole wheat. So I bought the whole setup. I got a really nice mixer, got everything, a big, really nice grinder. 100% whole wheat kind of is really heavy, and I kind of got away from it and quit doing it for a while. I got into sourdough. I really like sourdough. I made my own cultures starting from just the air, and I've got some. You can get it from this stuff from the Oregon Trail, and I've done different things like that. The problem with sourdough is I managed to kill my thing always. I'd always, like people call it pet, because you had to feed it every day, and I'd forget, or instead of using filtered water, I'd use regular tap water, and it would sometimes kill it. So then I got into the recipes like this, and this one here, what it does is it uses a real small amount of yeast and with a long rise. So you're not quite getting the sourdough taste, but you're getting a really yeasty, full taste that is really good. And in this recipe, I don't use a mixer at all. It is done all by hand, and it's pretty simple. So let me see my vote. Okay, now I'll go here. So the tools that you would want to get is I would scale. Instant read thermometer is nice because you can use instant read thermometer to make sure you don't have the water too hot coming out of the top. The water should be, for this one, I think it's between 95 and 100 degrees. And I'm not sure I'm going to pronounce this right. A banneton. This is for shaping the loaves, and a bench scraper or a dough scraper. And if you're going to score the loaf, razor blade and Dutch ovens. This is some of my stuff I have here. I just recently bought the bannetons, and these are like cane. They got a little. I've never done it without the cover on there, but you can do it, and we get the nice little ridges and stuff in there. And I'm saying before I had that, I had used basically some cloth like this over here and floured it and put it into like a colander, or I've used it like in a Tupperware to get the longer shape. And then I have over here, I have my, whoops, if I go back, how to get back, my Dutch ovens. And I recently bought the big red round one, and it's heavy. I don't like it very well for baking. My kids had bought me this one here, this one in the middle, the Emily Henry. It's a long one. I use that for like making sandwich bread. Well, this one here, you don't shape it before you put it in here. And then I have this oblong one, which I like really well. I got it from Facebook Market for about 20 bucks. It's a Pampered Chef, and it's not very heavy, and it's really nice. And I like the shape, the longer loaves really well in it. And the reason you use like a Dutch oven is it kind of keeps the steam in. It's kind of like in a commercial process, they would be baking these. They would, at some point, they would inject steam into the oven to kind of get the textures and everything else. And so this is supposed to kind of simulate that. I've done them without the Dutch ovens before, with just on like a baking stone or a tray. I put ice cubes in the oven sometimes to do it. I like the Dutch ovens the best, but I'm saying the big round one, it's a 7-quart. It's heavy, and so I'm going to put on my list of a ceramic one put it on my wish list on Amazon. So maybe my kids might get that for me for my birthday or Christmas. So I'm going to talk about baker's percentages a little bit. A lot of when you really get into baking, and I don't do a lot of this, but they do it all by percentages. And I screwed up the volume here, but so you got your 100% flour. So that way you can adjust your size. So this one does 2 loaves. So if you wanted to, you can just go cut it in half, or if you wanted bigger loaves, you could just increment it, and all your percentages everything just needs to go up in along the lines here. And I'm going to talk about flour here briefly. So in this recipe, I've used both bread flour and all-purpose flour. I normally would use bread flour, but when I was getting ready for this thing here, I was practicing, because I was kind of out of practice with this recipe. And I was reading through this book I have, and they were where this book recipe came from. They were recommending using King Arthur all-purpose flour. So I did one with all-purpose flour, and it turned out pretty good. Bread flour, I like bread flour for most of my regular breads like this, because you're going to get the bigger holes. It's going to have more structure, so the gluten's going to develop more. You'll get the bigger holes. The crust is going to be a little bit more tough and stuff like that. So, but so I most of the time would just use bread flour, regular bread flour. A lot of people recommend the King Arthur flour. I have never used the King Arthur flour. I'm saying this book recommended King Arthur's, their all-purpose flour for this recipe, but it's a higher protein than a lot of the all-purpose flours that are out there. It's actually kind of hard to find out what the actual protein content, and I'm getting talking really fast here, and the protein content kind of is linked to your gluten development. So the higher your protein content, the higher your gluten development stuff is for that. And so, so I'll go in here, but I really recommend using a scale for all this stuff. And if you do grams, and I got some typo errors, I left off the cup. So let's just be 1,000 grams, or it's 5 3/4 cup flour. Is that 5 3/4 cup plus 1.5 teaspoons, tablespoons, I'm sorry. And then the water, 720 grams. And I do weigh the water. I hadn't until recently started weighing the water, but this is gonna be more accurate than doing it with a measuring cup. And little bits can make a big difference. And the thing about weighing it, it's like flour with humidity and everything else. If you do weigh it, it's always going to be the same. It's going to be, or if you're getting by volumes and just measuring cups, you're might have more flour packed in your cup. So it's a little better. And then with salt, one thing about salt is the weight of salt is going to be this. So if I don't have fine sea salt, I've substituted other types of salts here. In fact, I used table salt when I did this one here. The 21 grams is going to be 21 grams versus 21 grams of kosher salt, whatever. But 1 teaspoon of kosher salt is going to be I believe way less. I don't have it backwards, way less than 1 teaspoon of fine sea salt, or vice versa. So the weight's always the best. On the yeast, I like doing the volumes with a little teaspoon. Some of these recipes that are here use really low yeast, like 1/8 of a teaspoon. So saying this recipe I'm doing is takes about 5 hours. They have a real similar recipe to this one that uses that actually is overnight. You can do it actually over a couple of days, and that one there only uses an eighth of a teaspoon of yeast. And I'm saying the longer, so the little bit of the less yeast with the longer rise, it will develop that yeasty, soury kind of taste, which is really nice. Okay, so I'm gonna start. The first part we're gonna go here, and I messed up this video here. I messed up quite a few of my little videos on this. I hit start. I already had it running, and I hit start on my little remote, and then I hit this. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the water and the yeast, and I had pictures of the scale, but I don't know weighing them out. But this is there's the yeast in the water, and I started by mixing it with the little spatula, and then I moved to my hands. It's kind of dry and it's kind of sticky a little bit. It's kind of dry. It's going to feel kind of dry and look kind of dry. And I don't know if I call it, this is OLLI or your soak. So you're going to take this and you're going to mix it together, and then you're going to cover it and let it sit for 20 to 30 minutes. And what this is going to do is there's no yeast or salt in it at this point yet. It's going to kind of unwind the gluten and kind of develop it more. And then after about 20 to 30 minutes, you're going to come to it. Looks like I got that video. Come on. And it's going to be along like this line, like here. And what we're going to do is we're going to mix this using the pincher method. And so what I'm going to start out by doing here, so I got to start with you. This is my little puppy behind me. I'm going to make a little pocket for it, and I already weighed out the salt and measured out the yeast. And I'm going to put it in there, put a little pocket here. I sprinkle it here, and then I'm going to fold it over the top, make kind of engulf it into like a pocket. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start using my pincher method. I'm going to be pinching all the way through this about 5 or 6 times each side, like this, and then I'm going to fold it. And I'm going to do this for, I think I can do this about 3 or 4 minutes, about 5 minutes. You're going to, as you're doing this, you're going to fill the salt that's in there. So basically you do it until you can't fill the salt. And as your hands start to stick, you can dip your hands in water a couple times, and I'll show you, I probably dip my hands in water here in about a second. And actually dipping in the hands in the water actually makes it so it cuts through the dough a little bit better. I've tried, so this is going to have a few steps. I'm going to get a little ahead of myself, doing this with a mixer before, and I'm going to have to try it differently where I do just this part with the mixer. But if I tried it before where I mix this all together and I let the mixer knead it for 5 minutes, and I wasn't real happy with the results. So I think I'm going to try it again. I'm going to do the part I'm doing right now with the mixer, but here in a couple, and then once I get it, and then there's like folds you do after this, after letting it sit, that I might do by hand. All right. So one of these, I'm doing this in a regular round bowl. I would probably recommend if I had a round tub that with lines in it, I'd probably do the whole thing in a tub. I have a tub that I'll put it into later, but it's a square one and it's hard to get the flour and everything from the corners, so I do it in the bowl. I'm just trying to get this here. I'm saying I got to grab the thing. I might fast forward it through. But I'm saying it's not that hard. You get a fairly good workout with that, but it does a pretty good job. And I'm saying not every squeeze you'll fill the salt, but you will fill it some in there. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now is I'm looking and I'm filling. So okay, I'm trying to fill salt. Once I get a few of these things where I squeeze it and then fold it to where I don't feel the salt, I'll once I get to that point, then I'll start stretching it. And that should be here in about a second or so, I think. Okay, I'll kind of fast forward it a little bit. And I hope that's on this video. I'll keep trying to make my mind want to do it. Should be here. Okay, all right. I guess I don't have it in here. Okay, well, there we go. I guess I got this in here I got the wrong videos and stuff. So after about a period of time, you're gonna fold it for about 30 seconds, like I'm doing here. Let me go back. Oh, I stopped it. That's what I did. Yeah, I fold it for about 30 seconds into here, like I'm doing here. And then after you've folded it several times, it'll start to get tight. You'll cover it. So now at this point, as I've been folding about 30 seconds, maybe a minute, I'll cover it with plastic and I'll let it sit for 30 minutes. And I'm gonna then I'm going to I'm missing a video here, so I'm gonna only show this once, but I'm gonna take it, I'm going to after I'm sitting for 30, I'm gonna fold it. It's only like 4 folds. Just fold, and then you know, one more, and then one more time. Then you're gonna cover it. And I don't have, and then you're gonna do that again. This is actually on my second time doing it around my hair. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to grab my my little plastic tote here. And the reason why I use that is because it has the lines in it, so it makes it a little bit easier to see how far it has risen. And so we're already been into this. It's been about an hour since I got it all mixed together and started doing the folds. And I ended up later on coming up with a plastic lid, but I'm going to go sit there and I'm going to let this sit. And I put it in the oven with this the light on in the oven, kind of those things. So we got the lines to kind of see how it goes. And I'm gonna let that sit for about another 4 hours. And I'm saying, in another recipe I have similar to this one, you actually let it sit for 12 to 15 hours. But it uses less yeast. So this one here, and oops. So okay, now it's coming out of the thing, and I didn't show you, but it's between the 2 and the 3 liter mark on the thing here. And I'm going to take and I'm going to shape it into 2 loaves. And so I got my bench scraper. And
did you punch it down or not?
Not really. It kind of, in the process of forming this right now, it does kind of get punched down because I'm going to go be folding this into making into balls. So I have 2 of them. I've got a round one that I'm doing, and I'm doing the round one first. And sometimes just use just a scraper to kind of get it formed, but I'm punching a lot of the air out at this point. But I'm still leaving quite a bit of air, and I'm not trying to get all the air out. And so then that's the wrong baton. This is the other one I put it in. And you can, at this point, the recipe I'm following, this is out of bread salt yeast or blood flour yeast. They recommend putting it seam down. And if you put it seam down, it's going to be different. And on this one here, I think I put them both seam down, but I screwed up these loaves here because I didn't have the flour quite right on these things. So these are new bannetons. And when I took them out, they actually stuck really bad. So I'm going to finish it with another batch that I did. So what I do now is I preheat the oven to 475 degrees, and I put my Dutch ovens in the oven and let them get hot. And I set these on the oven on the stove while it's doing that. So that's how I'm getting it's a little bit warmer. And I let it rise for the first rise and stuff I did would be called bulk fermentation, but this would be actually, when they talk about rise, this would be your rise. And let this rise for about an hour to hour 15 minutes. When you push on it, it'll dent in, but it'll come back, but not spring back really fast. And then what I do is I take them out and put them onto parchment paper. And you don't have to put them on parchment paper, but getting them in the Dutch oven and everything afterwards would be harder not to do it. So it makes it easier to get them in the Dutch oven. And in these, the round loaf, I had put it in the banneton seam down, and on the long oblong one, I did not. And so what you can do here is I have a razor. They actually have a tool you can get that holds the razor for cutting it. And I'm just going to score the top. You do with a 30-degree angle. You slice it down the thing here. And I probably should have sliced deeper than this. But that's go here, and then I'm going to do is I'm going to set this aside out of the way. I'm saying I'm going to take the Dutch ovens out of the oven, and I'm saying those things are hot. I'm setting on the stove. The here. I'm saying that round one's heavy. And so when you're pulling that thing out hot, it kind of sucks. And so I always use just a dish towel for taking out the things I don't like, bread pot holders, but it's pretty hot. And I'm saying in the oblong one is actually ceramic, so it's not very heavy. So I really like that one better. Because of that, partly because of that reason. I also like the oblong better because when I slice it in the sandwich and stuff, I kind of like the oblong loaves being a little bit smaller, a little more uniform for the things. So I take them off, and then basically I'm grabbing it. I'm going to grab by the parchment paper to kind of grab it and put it into there. I'm saying you could have done this just on the table and just lowered it in without the parchment paper, but I think you're really risking or making it hard to burn yourself. Because those pans are 475 degrees. Okay, so get it in there. I almost want to grab it with my hand, but I didn't. We're gonna, and so what we're gonna do is we're gonna get this into the oven, and I'm gonna bake it for 30 minutes at 475 degrees, and after 30 minutes, I'm sorry, let's finish here. This time. And then 30. Oops. So I'll take it out. So after 30 minutes, I'm going to take the lid off of them, and then I'm going to cook it for another 15 to 20. My oven's been doing it. I've only been doing 15. The recipe says 20. If I do it 20, they get and even at the 15, I want the round loaf was a little more done than I would want it to be. So then you just pretty much and as what's kind of nice and is with the parchment paper also it makes it easier to get them out of the things. You get them out of the oven, and I got a little cooling rack set up there, and so you go and you put them on the cooling rack, and you want to wait probably an hour before slicing it. If you look here, I'm saying that I'm not super happy with the round loaf the way it turned out. And I'm saying these are not the best loaves I made either. And these two loaves were made with all-purpose flour, and I don't normally do all-purpose flour. But this one here, I think the cut should have been different. It would have probably exploded more if I would have done that one. And and so this one here, the bottom was pretty good. I don't know if you can see the bottom when I do the round one. The round one, I think, is supposed to be the Dutch oven. The cast iron Dutch oven was a little bit darker. I didn't say that. So, and this is what they look like after I cut it. And that was the round I cut. It looked good, but it didn't have the pretty. The reason why I didn't like the round one, it didn't have the pretty crinkles that they have on them a lot of times. I'm saying if I go back to my first one, this is the same recipe I made. Let's see.
Jim, we have a couple questions.
Oh, but stop sharing. Why did you stop sharing?
You just need to share again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's see. I was just gonna show I'll just go screen one. So this one here is the same recipe, and I put them both seam down, and see all the nice cracks that go here. So if you do the seam down in that banneton when you're shaping it, you would not cut it. But all right, so that's kind of what it is. I got a couple things I was going to recommend. Oh, I'm almost out of time. Oh, let's go take. The books I used for this recipe was Flour, Water, Salt, Yeast. I really like this book. You can get it from the library. It has. I have a couple other books I use. I got Cook's. American Test Kitchen has a book, Breads Illustrated, which has a lot of really good recipes in it. And I have another one, was Bread Maker's Apprentice by Peter Reinhardt, that I like really well too. But I think the bread, water, salt, yeast is my favorite. So that and then another place to get the recipes, King Arthur has some really good recipes out there also, and a lot of stuff like that. And they also want to, King Arthur, they want to sell you flour or tools and stuff like that. So, okay, so what's your questions?
Well, there's a question in the chat. When can you add cheese to your dough? So you just have pockets of it, not spread throughout the bread.
Okay, what you do is you do the bulk fermentation. That's the first part what I did for the 5 hours or so. And then you would kind of flatten it, and then you would sprinkle it with the cheese. There's a really good recipe in my Breads Illustrated that really from America's Test Kitchen that goes into some really good details. It's a black pepper cheddar loaf that is a really good recipe. So you would kind of flatten it. You don't want to knock all the air out. You kind of flatten it to like a rectangle, and then you would spread it with cheese, and you would kind of roll it and then shape it. Do we have any other questions?
Oh yes, sorry. I was
I
trying
don't see the, oh, there's a chat.
Okay. What can I add to my ciabatta to give it more flavor? Ooh.
I think the thing with your ciabatta would be you'd want to do if you could find a recipe that's doing the long rise, and I don't know if it was in the water, flour, salt, yeast, if it was in this one or if it was in the Peter Reinhardt's one has one, but they're letting it rise like I want to say 24. It's a long rise, and so that long rise gives it the really good flavor. And you know, I complained about that little square tub I have for measuring things. If you're doing ciabatta, and I actually got this from, I was watching Great Britain Break Off. They had one where they actually were, whatever, Paul Hollywood did one about how to do things. And he did a ciabatta thing, and he used like a square pan like this, and then he pulled it out, and the way he cut it, it made it shaped really nice and for the seam that they have. So he used a square one when he did it, and it was really nice the way he did that. So that's actually one of my favorite TV shows. So if you get a chance, watch that one. If you haven't watched it, it's really good.
One more question. How can I get my bread to be lighter?
Lighter. Well, if you the lighter is kind of hard. I don't know. I mean, I'm saying like, depending what type of bread you're doing. If you're doing an enriched bread, like for dinner rolls and stuff like that, you probably want to use all-purpose flour. You want to be careful not to knead your dough, because if you knead it too much, it's going to be tougher. You're also going on that one there, so it'll be tougher. There's like a test you can do when you're kneading your dough, and I don't do it for these, where you kind of take it and you'll take a little piece of it and you'll pull it and you'll stretch it, and if you can see through it, to see the light through it, it's like called the window test. It's been kneaded enough. So, but I'm saying I think probably if it's heavy, it's probably you're over kneading it probably, or you're not getting your good rise that you need, or you're not letting it rise enough, or if you get really bubbly and it falls, you let it rise too much. And one of my practices is I did that where it just flat. It was still tasted good. It was almost more like a, I don't know, yeah, it just kind of flattened out really good. It didn't keep its shape.
We do have one more question. How do you store the bread, and how long can you store it?
You can, it doesn't store that long. I would say probably about 3 days is probably about all I go. You could store it in sometimes I reuse like regular bread things. If the crust is kind of hard, this is one thing you can do. You could wrap it after your initial cooling, like with saran wrap, and it will help soften the crust a little bit. Because sometimes this crust, it's artisan bread. It's not real tender crust, but it's really good, and I really like it for sandwiches. One thing also, if you're going to use whole wheat, you're going to increase your water. There's things out there. I think they were recommending like for I don't know how much water it was, but if you added like you would take part of your regular yeast out, and then go from there. Add whole wheat, and I would not recommend doing 100% whole wheat because it's so hard and so heavy. I probably wouldn't go more than 75%, but 50-50 is probably 40-60 or 50-50 is probably better than doing that much whole wheat.
Well, Jim, thank you. This has been fascinating. I'm not a baker myself, so I learned a lot, of course, but I hope that people who are bakers also learned so much. That was amazing. And if you don't have samples here today, I'm going to be really disappointed.
I don't have samples. It takes a long time to make this, so I did this weekend. So I actually had some at home, but it'd been from I actually had for breakfast, I had peanut butter toast from it that I made this weekend, but I didn't think it'd be, I wanted to be fresh when I made it, so I'll bring some in.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Well, thank you everyone for joining us at OLLI at the University of South Dakota. Just a reminder, tomorrow we have Abby Normal's Museum of the Strange. And I am really looking forward to that because as you can tell, I love strange things. Swamp Thing, that was kind of one of my favorites. But we'll be looking at some really interesting artifacts tomorrow. If you're a little person who doesn't like oddities and taxidermy and things like that, you may not want to tune in, but if you're like me, that's going to trip your trigger, and I'll see you here. So we will see you all tomorrow. Thank you for joining us, and Jim, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.